Good afternoon. My name is JT Monashagin, JT Manushagin, and I'm the police chief of the Lake Worth Police Department. Today, we've asked you to come here so that we can discuss the connection between the federal lawsuit that was announced yesterday with the September 2021 officer-involved shooting involving the same officer. So up until today, we had not released the name of the officer, but we felt like that now was the most prudent time to release that information. Just a quick recap on the shooting. So that occurred on September the 3rd of 2021, where one of our officers initiated a traffic stop on 820 for a vehicle that was speeding. The officer later discovered that the vehicle was stolen. It was occupied by 4 people. Once the vehicle struck a curb and wrecked, all of the occupants got out of the vehicle and began to run away. It was at that time the left rear passenger exited the vehicle with a weapon in his hand, extended magazine, and a short time later, Officer Granado fired his weapon, killing the 18-year-old that ran. Name is Estevan Ramirez. Following that case, just like the case that we discussed yesterday, we invited in an outside third-party agency to investigate. In this case, it was the Fort Worth Police Department's Major Crimes Unit. This shooting occurred in the city of Fort Worth, so we asked them to perform that investigation. At the same time, we opened an internal affairs investigation or an administrative investigation into the officer's conduct, and that investigation examines internal policy violations while the criminal investigation obviously evaluates criminal misconduct. To date, the criminal investigation has been completed by the Fort Worth Police Department, and the criminal case has been turned over to the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office. That occurred on December the 22nd, if I'm not mistaken. However, about 22 days prior to that, Officer Granado did tender his resignation to the Lake Worth Police Department, which I accepted that day. And as I've said before, that's a decision that we support. The next steps in terms of the criminal investigation will be in the hands of the District Attorney's Office, where they will review the facts of the case, present it to a grand jury, and a grand jury will vote and decide whether or not to indict or take no criminal action. It's important to remind you all that these 2 cases took the exact same path. In both cases, and in any case like this for the Lake Worth Police Department, we do invite in an outside agency to conduct an unbiased third-party review of the officer's actions. We remove ourselves completely from that process. That's in keeping with best practices. That's in keeping with the recommendations and asks of our district attorney. And so we honor that. I would like to say in relation to the officer-involved shooting case that we have and continue to remain in close contact with the family of Estevan Ramirez, and they have asked that you all respect their privacy during this time. That is a request that they've made repeatedly throughout this process, and you know, every time I do a press release or I do a press conference related to this, I reach out to the family and ask them if there's anything they would like for me to relay, and today that was their request. So please don't go to their house. Don't reach out to them on social media. They have asked that you respect their privacy, and on their behalf, I would ask that you do that and honor that request. At this time, I know that there are a lot of questions, and that's the primary purpose of this press conference, is to get those questions answered. So I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Chief, regarding the incident in September, that's still up to the grand jury to decide, right? I just want to make sure I heard it correctly.
Correct. The officer-involved shooting, yes. So the previous incident that, the lawsuit that was announced yesterday, that incident has been completely resolved in the criminal courts. So now all that's pending is the lawsuit against the officer personally.
Had this officer not resigned when he did, would you have taken any sort of action in terms of his position with the department?
So I don't take action until I'm presented with all the facts, with the findings of the administrative investigation and the criminal investigation. In this case, neither were complete. So I hadn't even received the things that I needed to make a decision. So I'm not able to speculate. But again, it's a decision that we support.
So, just to clarify, I know you did say this, he resigned before the determination came before.
Yes, he resigned before any conclusion, any determinations had been made. In fact, we believe that in these cases where there's been a deadly use of force, that it is not prudent to close the administrative investigation until the criminal investigation is closed. So that administrative investigation remains open even to this day, and we don't anticipate closing that until the grand jury decides.
Chief, I appreciate you taking my question over FaceTime again.
Sure.
I know we were just here yesterday, obviously, talking about the SCP crash. Just for the viewers at home, I think a lot of them might ask, why was this not brought up during the press conference yesterday? Was it a matter of the investigation still being open, or at least not having a grand jury decision? But, why are we back here today versus just going through this yesterday, I guess?
Sure. So we've tried to treat these two incidents as separate incidents. They are 2 years apart, or a year apart. We're 2 years almost now from the first. So we believe in procedural justice for our officer, and so we're trying to treat each case on a case-by-case basis. But at the same time, we felt like until the point yesterday, the officer's name had not been released. And we did that because he's pending a case with the grand jury. And so just like we would with anyone, we want to preserve their due process rights. So we didn't choose to release his name, but once his name was out in the public, we felt like our community deserves to hear that connection from us, and not, circulated in the media channels. So as soon as I learned that the connection had been made in the public's eye, I immediately went to my team and asked for the press conference, because I believe that our community deserves to hear that from me.
And I think in a previous group that we had, we mentioned that the family had been able to view the body camera footage from the incident. And correct me if I'm wrong, but knowing that the family has seen it, I would imagine that you've seen it as well. Are you able to just walk through what your impressions were from that shooting and the officer's act?
Sure. So I have to remind you that that case is still under investigation. So I'm not going to go into any of the details on that case. But to your first point regarding our relationship with the family, yes, we have met with them several times. We are in regular communication with them. And, I'm very proud of how hard our team has worked to have a relationship with a family in a very difficult circumstance. So, I'm,
Oh, and I don't know if this has been said. Are the other suspects still out there? I know you were looking for them before when we previously did the story. I'm not sure if I've been caught up to speed, but are you still looking for the other occupants of that vehicle?
yes, so warrants were issued for their arrest, and it's my understanding that they have been arrested by the Fort Worth Police Department.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you bet. Yes, ma'am.
The officer that we're talking about now, can you give information about how long he's been with the department, how long he's been working with?
Yes, so just about 4 years. I mentioned yesterday that he and I hired on the same day. So that would have been in March of 2018. I was not a part of his hiring process. He was hired prior to my arrival, but I do remember that first day together.
And overall, how many years does he have in,
This was his first police job. As I mentioned yesterday, he started his career in Grand Prairie as a jailer. Then he put himself through the police academy, and then we were his very first policing job. And I know a lot of people are going to rush to speculate and judge this officer based on his actions. And as public servants, we understand that that's something that we have to be prepared for. That when you serve in this capacity, everything that you do and say is subject to scrutiny. And we're okay with that. As someone who takes pride in knowing my officers, knowing their story, I can say that this officer is a good person. His story is incredible when you learn what he went through and the journey that he took to become a police officer in the first place. It's remarkable. That doesn't excuse his actions. It doesn't prevent any good person from making mistakes. We're all, subject to that. But he's not a bad person, for what it's worth.
Are you still in contact with him, or since he's, if you guys start a day and he worked under you, I would imagine there's some sort of relationship there. Are you able to just talk a little bit more about maybe what he did go through?
Sure.
Or what his psyche has been ever since these incidents have happened?
So as the police chief, it would not be appropriate for me to maintain a relationship with him. I'm the one who's making disciplinary decisions and things like that. However, I am an engaged police chief, so I have relationships with people who have relationships with him. And so I do regularly check in through those channels to see how he's doing, because whether he's with our department or not, he's a brother in blue, and I care deeply about him. So a number of our team members are in contact with him and trying to provide peer support. As you can imagine, this is an incredibly difficult time for him and his family. He never once set out to do these things. And so it's a heavy weight for him to carry, and we certainly don't want him to feel like he's carrying that weight alone. And again, I'm not condoning his actions. I'm talking about him as a human being and our compassion for brothers and fellow human beings. We want to just support him through this process. Yes, sir.
What can you tell the rest of the public, not just his family, who continually keeps losing trust in police departments all over the country, when I think everybody present in this room grew up knowing that you're the good guys.
Right.
And suddenly in the last 5-10 years, that's changing. What can you say to that?
So I'm well aware of the national impact that cases like this have. I'm aware that when videos like the one that was released yesterday become public, that there is an erosion of public trust in us. So I think the first step is acknowledging that fact, and I hope that there are law enforcement leaders elsewhere in the country who are willing to come to this podium when they or a member of their team makes a mistake and talks openly about it, talks openly about the things they're going to do to try and fix it, and actually goes back to their office and makes good on those promises.
They asked about the psyche of this particular officer. What's the morale in the rest of the department like?
So we're a very proud department. We're proud of the things that we've accomplished. We're proud of the service that we provide to the community. And the actions of this officer do not represent the entirety of our department. So I can say personally and probably on behalf of our troops that we're sad. We're sad that these things happened, and we certainly understand the impact that it has on our community. We talk all the time about an equity account, that every day when we go out and patrol, we are making positive deposits into an equity account that's owned by our community. And you don't make massive deposits as police officers. You make little deposits over time. And when something like this happens, there's a tremendous withdrawal that's made from that account. But if, as a police department, you've worked hard to make those investments, then your account doesn't go negative. You may lose equity, but you don't go in the red. And we feel the effect of a withdrawal from that account. We know that people look at us and are disappointed in the action of this officer, but it just renews our commitment to go back out and continue making investments again. I do not want the public to think that we are going to cower, that we're going to back away. We understand the mistake, and we're going to go out with a fire to make it right.
Thank you.
Yes.
You talk about mistakes, and the public might see that as like, well, if I make a mistake in my job, it's different, I can try again tomorrow. But a mistake in the police department, it's completely different. What conversations are you having with your officers, further training, anything like that? What are the conversations like?
Sure. So we have already done a lot of those things. In fact, since this began, we became a recognized law enforcement agency with the Texas Police Chiefs Association. So we are already taking those steps to ensure that proper protocol, proper policy are in place, that mandatory required best practice training is in place. Those are things that began 2 years ago when I took over as the chief of police. This incident, the first incident involving the vehicle, took place just a few months after I had taken over. So it has been a process over time, and we're not abandoning that in any way. We're going to continue to push forward and ensure our officers are the best equipped, the best trained, and have the best leadership and support that we can possibly give them.
Chief, just double checking, after that September incident, was that officer placed on routine leave?
Yes.
Okay.
So following that incident, he was placed on administrative leave. As soon as the internal affairs investigation concluded, he was brought back and placed into an administrative status, which is plain clothes. He's not out on the street. He's not in uniform. And he remained in that status until the case went to the grand jury. Only after the grand jury took no action was he returned to full duty. And even then, as a condition of his discipline, he was also required to undergo additional training. So when he came back, not only had he been disciplined, but he had also undergone the required training that I had prescribed for him.
And that was as a result of that internal investigation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just make sure. Thank you.
Right, I was gonna, so, did that came after the SUV incident? What you
The
just said?
shooting.
The shooting.
The shooting did, but the discipline and the leave process that I discussed came as a result of the SUV incident. So he was given an 80-hour suspension. He was required to undergo additional training. He was required to give feedback to his peer group on the things that he learned as a result of the incident, and so on. And only after all of those things were complete and the grand jury took no action was he returned to duty.
The second, I know he resigned before the decision came from Fort Worth Police. That internal investigation, were you guys able to finish it before he did that? Was there any time?
No, that investigation remains open, and as soon as we get a decision from the grand jury, we'll officially close that. I should point out that following the shooting, the officer never returned back to work. So he remained in an administrative leave status away from work until his resignation.
Now, just to clarify, you did mention there was two investigations, one by the Fort Worth PD, right?
Mhm.
And the other one from internal investigations for the Department of Interior.
Correct.
Was there an additional one, or was there three, or?
No, sir, just two. Fort Worth PD led the criminal investigation. We conducted an internal affairs investigation for the shooting, so just two.
And that second one has not concluded yet?
Correct. It will, all of the work in the case is finished, but we're not prepared to make a determination until the grand jury. I would never want to make a decision that was in opposition of the grand jury. So we want there to be confidence in the system, and we have tremendous respect for the grand jury and that grand jury process. So I'm not going to do anything that would disrupt the trust there.
My last question would be, I mean, like you mentioned, there is going to be speculation, unfortunately. But, I mean, what can you say about, when one cop is involved in one incident? I mean, it's hard and it's difficult, but the same officer being involved in two
Mhm. So that is the crystal ball question. And there are times where I wish we lived in a world where we could see into the future and make decisions. I think our world would be a much better place if we could do that. But unfortunately, we can't. And at the time, I made a decision to administer significant discipline in the hopes that he would learn, he would return to duty, and he would be better because of it. And that's a decision that I stand by. Do I wish that I had the ability to look out and predict what would happen in the future? Of course, but I didn't. So I stand by my decision to preserve the officer's job and to give him a chance. As I mentioned yesterday, we would never have seasoned, experienced police officers if we fired them all after their first mistake. And that is in no way to diminish the significance of the mistake. I completely understand that. But we have all made mistakes. We understand that our mistakes carry with them a heavier weight, and that's not lost on us. But in this case, I believe that the officer deserved a chance to learn from it and come back better.
Could you do name, spelling, and title once more? I don't know if anybody
Sure.
has any questions. Doesn't seem like it. Could you please?
Sure. JT, MANOUSHAGIAN, Monishagan,
Full title?
Chief of Police,
Thank you very much.
Lake Worth PD.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Anything else from our team? Anything that I forgot that you think I should mention? Okay, thank y'all.